Welcome you to our second conference. And my job today is to introduce my colleague, Dean Gauci. But before that I do that, I wanted to thank all of you for being here. And in a special way, I want to thank Professor R.P. for putting this all together. He had a vision for the center that he's brought to a place beyond my personal expectations. So I want to thank R.P. I also want to thank Bob Gatch, who has been a benefactor of the center, but also has helped RP plan the vision for the center and has helped us really execute on what the center can do. So now please join me in welcoming David Gauci, my colleague and the Dean of the Graduate School of Business Administration.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for coming today. I simply want to say this is an important initiative on the part of the Center for Digital Transformation, one of the stellar examples of the initiatives that are taking place at the Schools of Business at Fordham. Before I continue, let me introduce the Reverend Joseph M. McShane, the president of Fordham University of the Society of Jesus.
Thank you very much, David. I promise I will not keep you long. You have a very important and full agenda ahead of you. But on behalf of everyone here at Fordham, I welcome you.
Not only do I welcome you, I encourage you in all the work that you'll be doing. The Bronx, as you know, is the most forgotten of the boroughs, with the possible exception of Staten Island, but they've got a bridge. But the Bronx is also the youngest and the poorest of the five boroughs. Therefore, the Bronx is the borough that really needs creative work done. It needs vision, and it needs cooperative work that can be carried out so that the Bronx achieves great things in the future. Fordham has called the Bronx home since its founding in 1841, and we are proud of that. And we are proud to lend our support to any and all causes that promise to transform the economic base in the Bronx. So I welcome you, I encourage you, I thank you for all that you're doing for our beloved Bronx, and I cannot say enough good about our faculty organizer, who is a genius and a man of great heart. So I thank you for everything that you're doing. Now I'm going to hand the back to David. All right. I hand the mic back to David. Again, welcome, have a great day, and come up with great schemes, please.
Well, I simply want to get the program rolling, so let me simply say that the topic of this program, the theme of this event, the Summit on Technology, Innovation, and Startups in the Bronx, looking at opportunities and challenges, I think is something that is really quite contemporary and quite real. And I appreciate all of you engaging in the discussion. The Bronx is actually an opportunity, I think, where a university, in collaboration with various partners around the city, and particularly within the borough, can probably take some initiative to really do good things, to apply technology in a way, to inspire startups, economic development, and improvement of the human condition here, I think is something that universities should commit themselves to doing. So the Center for Digital Transformation, in this respect, I think, is taking a lead. And if it can inspire collaboration and a technology coalition, so to speak, that is focused on the issues in the Bronx, then so be it. We should support this. So my congratulations to RP and his deputy, I should say, Evangelos Katsamakis in the center, and to all of their colleagues for having the insight to make this commitment and make it go forward. Let's resolve to make sure that this is not the last summit, but that this is in fact the first of many yet to come, where in future summits we will be reporting out the results of efforts to try to improve the human condition in the Bronx. So with that, let me invite RP to the podium. RP.
Okay, Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm going to keep it short because we have 8 speakers, and I couldn't say no to myself. I just thought every one of the speakers is distinguished and has more important and relevant things to say today than myself. So this summit is sponsored by not just the Schools of Business, but also the Center for International Policy Studies, the Urban Law Center for the Law School, and the Urban Studies program, and also by Latin Business Today. Teresita Abe-Kruger here has worked with me to put together this event today tirelessly, and she's going to come back later and moderate the panel after the speakers. So this is the only summit or event of its kind in the Bronx, connecting students and faculty, entrepreneurs, business savvy practitioners, venture capital experts, educators, nonprofits, all of them. And you'll see that in the speaker list as well as the panelists. Some of the next steps I'm looking at are, as Dean Gauci said, some kind of technology council or coalition, so that we can kind of semi-formalize what we do and continue to achieve some of the objectives. The other program that we're looking at is some kind of digital internship program for high school students. I'm basing that on the Rockefeller University model, basing a very good model for the summer, like a 6-week internship, again focused on technology, but linked to analytics and science, various domains. With that, I now invite Bob Gatch to give his talk, but also Bob is going to moderate speakers that are coming after. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, and it's my pleasure to be with you today, both to cover my topic and also to help to moderate with regard to the speakers. I'm going to cover really 2 different aspects of technology. One is kind of at a macro level, some of the trends that we see going on in the digital world. And then I'm going to try to apply that, if you will, on a micro basis, specifically what does that mean for the Bronx, both the opportunities for entrepreneurs and actually for businesses as well. So I want to start off just with a very simple grounding in history. And I think here what's important to understand is, as we look at technology and the different waves of change over the years, we really started with a very simple approach about automating processes, but not really changing the way that business has been conducted. And as the waves of technology have continued to wash over the business world, we're seeing more and more fundamental changes to the actual, if you will, ecosystem of a business. So not just automating record keeping, automating processes, but creating new products and services, new ways of doing business. And my theme today, as we talk about the digital world and the very nature of the center itself, is understanding what this means. It's more than just new technologies. It's driving a new way of doing business. So one of the ways that we look upon this in my company, I work for Accenture, is we do a yearly evaluation of different technologies. And if you're interested in more on this, because we don't have a lot of time to cover this today, you can download this off of our website. But our message this year is that every business is a digital business, whether or not you're a small startup, whether or not you're a small to medium-sized enterprise or a major corporation. And we see 7 different trends that make up this theme of a digital business. Now again, I won't go through all of these today, but let me pick out 1 or 2 just to really tease out what does this digital topic mean and what's really new about this. So first of all, if we talk about relationships at scale. For years, technology has been all about dealing with large volumes of information, dealing with large populations. What's different today is the ability to treat people as an audience of one. and to use digital information, social interaction, and other analytics to begin to really tailor products and services to the needs of an individual. The second one that I'll point out is this concept of design for analytics. For the last several years, we've heard topics around big data and analytics, and it's all been about looking after the fact. After something is done, trying to glean information about it. What we're now starting to see is that people are designing new processes and new technology beforehand to bake in the analytics and the information they want to capture. That's a very important theme. And the third one I'll touch upon very briefly, and we'll come back to that later, is this idea of seamless collaboration. The chance to move beyond the four walls of an organization. And the very simple metaphor for this that I like to use is, if you think about it, most of us are probably used to using now smartphones or tablets. And if you think about it, what that means is that we're in control. And we can mash up and cut across different technologies. And it's not the individual organization. It's not the bank that's offering the financial service. It's not the consumer goods company that has the website. We're in charge. And that's a great opportunity. We'll come and look at this later with regard to what that means for the Bronx. Now, when we think about this, and in terms of some precision around definition, there's really two dimensions that we can look at. And I'm a consultant, so we always have two-dimensional graphs. It's very important in our process. So we've got, our one axis, which is around revenue or the external focus, and the other, which is the internal focus of the profit margin. Simply said, a true digital organization is able to harness both. Being able to use digital technologies for contacting and interacting with their consumer or institutional customers, but also using technology to drive down the cost of providing those services. And when you can do that both and do that seamlessly, that's a digital business or a digital enterprise. Now, when we think about what this actually means and what is actually happening, we often hear about the topic about the pace of change really picking up. And I've just got a few statistics. Again, I'll just touch upon this briefly. The rise of a chief digital officer. This is often, one way of looking at, how things are coming together and, the change within an organization. So as the chart shows, over just a 2-year period, it's gone from kind of just a novelty to something that's more substantive, with almost 20% of companies, large companies, having this function. The other thing that I think is interesting is if we take a look at the way that technology is delivered, and I'll come back to this in a moment, you now have a situation where tablets have overtaken, in terms of shipments, desktops and notebooks. And in fact, if you look at the combination of tablets and mobile devices, people are consuming more digital content from those devices than from the so-called traditional devices. Third, again, this idea of the explosion of data. I think you're all familiar with this as you read the press and in your own lives, the way that we're exposed to YouTube and audio technologies, and the data that's behind this is driving a tremendous amount of proliferation, both of the information itself and then of characteristics about how that data is consumed. Fourth is the ecosystem, and I'll come back and talk about this a little bit later, but the idea is that we need to understand how these things come together, and especially in so-called cloud computing or other technologies, it's no longer a single provider. They need to be able to interact in a broader scheme. And that goes with how the services are delivered, and also this very important issue about how we can manage the security concepts. Now, pushing ahead and trying to make this more tangible, because we can often get lost just in the broad technology themes, what does this actually mean? Well, first of all, let's take a look at the way that consumers use technology. What's very interesting, a statistic from a study says that 75% of all the people that are going online to shop will actually finish their actual purchase in a physical store. So this idea of a hybrid environment, companies need to be able to navigate both the physical channel and the digital channel. Another one that I'll just tease out, which I think is very interesting as well, and I think has great impact for the Bronx in terms of harnessing power, where collaboration can come into play. So where we have good crowdsourcing capabilities, that is where people are doing reviews or ratings or doing frequently asked questions or other types of investigation, what we found is that in the best situations, 40% of the inquiries are going to be answered not by the company, but by the people that are in that community. Think about the power of that. and the opportunity in a community such as the Bronx to harness that, and we're only at the tip of the iceberg, really the start of that process. So these technologies clearly affect the way that we work, we learn, and we play. And I've listed here some of the different challenges and opportunities, and again, not to drain them all, but the point is that how we interact with the technology, the different processes that we can create, or the different products and services, the combination of physical channels and digital channels, all of these things are challenges, but they're also opportunities. And there are opportunities if you're a startup, and there are opportunities if you're a small or medium-sized enterprise. Again, before, years ago, a lot of these concepts or technologies were only available to the so-called Fortune 500 or G2000. Now the opportunity is that even very small companies or small startups can take advantage of these technologies by leveraging these ecosystems and capabilities. Now, underpinning a lot of this is the world of mobility. More and more, the digital agenda is being both driven by the availability of mobile technology, and mobile is becoming the glue. And again, at a very high level, we can see 5 very important themes, and I'll just pick upon 2 of them. One is this idea of new profit pools. You're probably familiar with the idea on the web about how companies will use advertising as opposed to other revenue models. We're seeing new revenue models come up with regard to the mobile world again, digital coupons, all sorts of different items. And again, here there's a chance, both from startups and small to medium-sized enterprises, to find new ways to unlock value. But by the same token, pressure on profitability. Pressure on profitability if you've got a distribution channel that's not effectively digitized, someone can come along and basically disrupt your situation. So what I find interesting about this is we often refer to mobility from our own concepts with our mobile phone. But we're now seeing an explosion of other types of technologies, wearable technologies, Google Glass, the watches, etc. So we're only really at the early stages. And this idea of embedded technology that's mobile with us is available 24 hours a day wherever we are and constantly connected to social networks, to the cloud, and to this analytic engine are very important for us to understand. So again, mobility is both a glue and also a digital lever for us. Now, that's a very quick landscape, if you will, of a lot of complicated technology and a lot of opportunities. But as I was thinking about our session today and some of the messages to get across, I thought it'd be very interesting to reflect on some other ecosystems that are out there. And obviously, Silicon Valley is one that is well known to all of us. This particular chart, and again, I know it's a little bit hard to see if you're in the back, but we can make all of these slides available to you, is a study that we did with the Accenture High Performing Institute about how things work in Silicon Valley with regard to startups. And here's the big takeaway, and it's no surprise, I think, to anyone. It's about a virtuous circle of creating an environment where technology companies, business entrepreneurs, financiers can come together in a productive environment and it becomes a virtuous circle. And one of the things that you'll see if you get a chance to study this chart is that it's not just the companies that become productive or public or grow, but how they can throw off other capabilities, how they can create other alumni and other virtuous circles in all of this. That's what we need to create here in the Bronx. I think there's a lot of elements that have been put in place over the last couple of years, but the next few years needs to see, I think, an acceleration and a take-up in these ideas. So I have 2 final sets of implications that I'd like to share with you, again, as we come down a little bit more to the micro basis. One is the implications for startups, and then I'll come with some implications for the Bronx itself. So first of all, the customer is in charge. The customer is in charge. And that's an opportunity for us if we're a technology entrepreneur, because we can now connect directly to those customers in a way that we can never before. And if we're helping small to medium-sized enterprises, that's an important consideration for us as well. It's all about mobility. And again, this is a great opportunity to be able to harness technologies that even small companies now have so much that they can leverage without having to make a lot of investments that heretofore to start major technology companies would have been the case. Market size of 1. That customer intimacy and understanding how to use that information to really serve that small market. And again, since the Bronx is really a collection of many small markets and small to medium-sized enterprises and different demographics, this should be an enabler for us. really understanding about how data is not only important as a source of information but can drive processes. And obviously, I really believe that all of this could be an advantage for smaller enterprises. For the Bronx, well, we need to continue to work on the skills that are necessary to succeed, both enabling the next generation of entrepreneurs, including starting at the student level, and making sure that they understand these technologies and can leverage them. Secondly, back to my chart on the ecosystem. Meetings like this, seminars like this, but also the activities that many of us are involved in to continue to build that ecosystem. And I think it becomes really a logarithmic continuation as that builds success upon success. I think mobility can play a great role in the Bronx as we can really cut that tether. And again, I think that really advantages the small to medium-sized enterprise, the value of data, and the power of social interaction. So those are some themes that hopefully will resonate with you, and we'll continue to build upon these with our other speakers. Thanks for your attention, and now I'd like to invite Dominique, who is the President of Product Management User Experience at the Gilt Group. Dominique, do you have a presentation as well? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you if you'd like to come up and use the
Good morning. To keep it lively. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here. To really kind of continue the conversation, I'm going to talk a lot about leadership and about kind of growing entrepreneurs and how we create an environment for them to be successful, and how we really kind of enable them to move forward. So that's really my focus today. I think having strong leadership and building strong leaders, particularly in entrepreneurial environments, is incredibly important, in order to empower those individuals to succeed. So I'll talk a lot about my experiences and doing that and coming up in kind of this tech startup world, and also how we're doing that a little bit at Gilt. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background about me, I actually never thought I'd be an entrepreneur at all. I didn't think I'd actually be in business. I grew up in Texas, and I thought I'd be a sheriff. No, I'm just kidding. Then I thought maybe an artist. I somehow jumped to marine biology. Then I thought maybe I'll be a lawyer. And I realized I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer. So my entry into kind of business, technology, and startups really came by chance. I was in college. I had an internship in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I started working for an online gaming company. And it was really kind of my first foray into technology and my first kind of jump into startups. And you have to remember, this was a time, and I was kind of speaking earlier, that this was a time when we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have smartphones. I'm not that old, but it wasn't as common. And so jumping into kind of technology and to the web and being in this space was really thrilling and very exciting. So after graduating college, I joined another startup called Jobs.com. And about 10 months on the job, that bubble burst, and I found myself 23 and still living at home. And I thought, I never will move out. So what seemed kind of like a minute, I was at my third startup in 3 years, Travelocity. And then after what seemed like a lifetime in technology, 12 years, I found myself moving to New York from Texas and starting at Gilt. So I've been almost at 4 startups now in a kind of a short amount of period of time. It's my world, it's what I know, and what I really do love. And even though I was in a lot of startup situations, it took me a while to realize what I love so much about startups and technology in this space. And it's really 3 things: pace, the innovation, and the people. So I'll talk about each one of those, but I'll really focus on the people more than anything. So first, pace. In e-com, as I think we most know, and being in that kind of retail and environment, it's exciting, it's up and down, it's like a roller coaster. And what I find so fun and thrilling is that pace day to day. The rate of change is fast, the environment is always changing, and you're always learning every single day. And I credit the pace of the startup environment as an accelerated learning institution. It's like being at a new job every single day, and you're constantly learning. Second is innovation. So our team at Gilt is really empowered with the single goal of how do they drive a better customer experience to drive revenue. And in order to have innovation, you really can't be afraid to fail. You have to take that leap. And so with the recent launch of different things and using technology like personal sales, we've allowed technology to create a better customized experience. And I think that gets back to kind of what Robert said about the market size of one. And so how do you create the most personal customized experience for that particular individual? And how do you empower them to find exactly what they need at exactly the right time? So, at Gilt, with our personal sales, what we use is an algorithm. It culls, it watches your behavior, it looks at your geographic information, and all of your factors, and it creates the best experience for you and the best personal sale for you. Our mobile team, and that's obviously a huge opportunity of what we're doing at Gilt, our mobile team has created a really sleek and innovative experience. We drive north of 40% of our traffic and our revenue out of our mobile space. It's really phenomenal. We have features like our Try It On feature, which allows customers to kind of put on sunglasses, take a photo of yourself, adjust it, and flip through all the options to find the best available fit. And so I think I use those examples that taking risk can really accelerate your business. Some industry data has suggested that about 20% of people buy something daily on their smartphones. It's incredibly powerful. It's a massive marketplace. And so at Gilt, we're always thinking about how we drive innovation. It's part of our DNA. After only being a member of this community, this technology community in New York for about 3 to 4 months, I'm starting to really embrace it. It's been really remarkable. I've been impressed with the discussions around innovation, the discussions about driving change, and as I attend different product meetups in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and all over the space, and as our team does as well, it's really incredible, and it's very exciting to be an entrepreneur in New York right now. So as we prepare for the next kind of administration that's coming in, I think it's important to make sure that we continue to think about how we nurture this community and how we drive for technology community to see the growth that we want to see in this area. So lastly, the third topic I want to talk about is people, and where I'll spend most of my time. Because I think it's one of the areas that I love most about being in technology and being about startups is the people and the teamwork. Entrepreneurship is really a delicate organism, and you need the right environment to flourish. You need a little bit of agility, a lot of innovation, passion, obviously a healthy market need. You need a good dose of ambition, and most importantly, I think you need a strong team. So the key to creating a strong organization is human capital. It's a great foundation, and it really helps drive your business forward. I believe it's our duty as entrepreneurial leaders to create and nurture strong teams. The way a team plays as a whole determines its success. And you may have the greatest bunch of individual stars in the world, but if they don't play together, the club won't be worth a dime, said Babe Ruth. Building and nurturing teams to create innovation is an opportunity and a challenge, but it's one of the most important investments that we can make as leaders. Identifying those talents of our team members, encouraging their full team participation, and working through the innovation process is very, very important, but I think especially true in a startup environment. In our role as leaders, we need to inspire a shared vision. We must provide the vision for the future by imagining and enabling possibilities for our teams. Enlist others to your common vision, enable them to act, foster the collaboration that needs to happen, and build trust. Leadership at its core is about what alternate people think and what they think is possible and what they can do. So you have to challenge the process. You have to create an environment that allows your team to search for the opportunities to innovate, ways to change, grow, and improve. You have to lead the charge on taking risk and celebrate the wins. Smart people. Being from kind of North Carolina and a basketball fan, I'll have to use a quote by John Wooden. And John Wooden said that whatever you do in life, you should surround yourself with smart people who will argue with you. I don't know if they should argue with you, but they should definitely give you different opinions. They should challenge you. And then I found really in my career, when I put myself around smart people, it only makes me better. Through my career, I've continually put myself in that situation to learn and grow. And when I think about my first days of being at Travelocity, there was so much I didn't know about the technology, about the space, just about travel industry in general. So it was important to really leverage all of my resources to keep pushing myself. Your trajectory is different when you are around people you can learn from. When staffing an entrepreneurial team, diversity breeds success. And a recent Catalyst report showed that companies with the highest percentages of women on their board outperformed the lowest companies by 53%. They have a higher return rate on sales and a higher return on investing capital. Diversity produces better results, and good companies appreciate that. It's been a great, I was saying this a little bit earlier when we were kind of chatting, but it's been a really phenomenal environment to be at Gilt. It's a different kind of technology company. It was started by women. It's grown from obviously 0 employees to over 1,000. And still today, approximately 54% of our leaders at Gilt are women. And that's an unbelievable environment to be in as a woman and as an entrepreneur and being in technology. So we really pride ourselves on being unique and being a different type of technology company. And on that, and being in that type of environment, it's been really important to look at strong role models. And I think that's our duty as well as leaders when we're really fostering that entrepreneurial environment, is to be a strong role model for our team. So especially being a woman in technology and a field that is truly most of the time dominated by men, it's important to find smart women that I could really relate to, that I could use as role models, as coaches, as mentors, and as friends. And I think I am so thankful that every day I still have those role models, and I talk to them daily. And as I continue to think about and reflect what being a role and having role models has done for my career and how it's really guided me, I look to myself as well as my peers at Gilt to really be that same kind of leader for the next generation. And it's very, very important. So I've just started kind of mentoring a mentee at Gilt. We've implemented a mentee program, and we're just starting to roll that out because it is such an important foundation for our organization. And so it's really always important to remember that you can learn from everyone if you're open. And it's really our charge as leaders to mentor and guide the next generation of entrepreneurs. So what I think is so important about that is leaders, we really need to enable others to act. When you create trust, people can create great things. And at Gilt, we've started what we call the social experiment with our teams. We've empowered really small teams to continue to innovate autonomously. We align them with a strategy, we develop a KPI, and it's really our job as leaders to empower them to make change and drive innovation every day. We help focus on the execution, we remove the roadblocks, and we really help drive and strengthen them. We empower them, strengthen them, we share the power, we create an environment where smart people want to be there. At Gilt recognizes individual contributions by sharing and appreciating the individual excellence, but we really celebrate the community. Leaders should always be to continue to ask, how can I make myself better? How do I continue to develop my toolkit? Through every level of your career, you should always be learning. We should inspire our teams to have passion that's better than they can be today. John F. Kennedy said that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other, and that's really so important. Every day is a new day to learn. A passion for knowledge and understanding are true key traits for leadership. And as leaders, we should encourage the heart. We should celebrate the values and the victories. Extraordinary leaders inspire teams. Leaders help create a vision for the better future. It's important that they model the way. The leader sets the tone by the way he talks, behaves, responds to others, and treats people every single day. You set the example by aligning actions with shared values. When the heart speaks, the mind finds it indecent to object. Milan Kundera. And lastly, in the ever-changing field of technology, it's really important for leaders to embrace every challenge. It's important to remember that problems are really nothing but opportunities brilliantly disguised as insurmountable barriers. And throughout my career, I've tried to remember to look at every opportunity as a gift and every challenge as an opportunity. One of the most challenging parts about being in an entrepreneurial environment is managing ambiguity. It's like being on a trapeze. You must let go of one trapeze to catch the next one. And for a short period of time, you're flying through the air. And I think it's important to know that as leaders, we can't allow our teams to be afraid to fail, that we have to empower them through that change and through that challenge. Great leaders have a heart for people. They take time for people. They view people as the bottom line, not as a tool to get to the bottom line. One of our most important contributions as entrepreneurial leaders is building and supporting strong teams. It's our greatest investment in our future and builds the strong foundation. Leadership and innovation will unleash the productivity and economic growth that will drive our prosperity. The ability to rapidly translate knowledge and insight into new high-value products and services is incredibly imperative. It's wonderful to be part of this discussion today. I thank you so much for doing that. Creating a community, creating a commitment to our neighborhood and our community by fostering an environment that supports technology innovation and invests in our people to build the next generation of leaders is critical to see the next wave of entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominica. I think we're going to return to that theme again, but very important, I think, for the success of the Bronx, those messages on leadership and mentorship. And I think that's something that both we here as a part of Fordham need to do, and in the different roles we play. So thank you, and a great success story during that. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to now welcome Patrick Sullivan, Strategic Partner for Development Management at Google. And I'm sure we'll have some interesting thoughts from Patrick. So please. Peter was yeah. It's that last one.
All right, sorry, I should know this. Well, thank you for having me here, and I'm born and raised in the Bronx. I'm very proud to come and speak today. I hope, piggyback on the previous discussion, a lot of my thoughts and the lessons I've learned from my journey growing up in the Bronx have translated into what I do today in business overall, and it's been very exciting. And coming from White Plains Road in the Bronx to where I am today at Google, and it's been a journey where I have a family of immigrants, my parents, and my dad retired in 1993, making $22,000 a year. So we didn't come from a family of money, and so I had to learn how to hustle. And I always say I was born hustling. It came out of my mother. But so just a little bit about the company I sold. We built a company in 2007. We sold in 2011 to Google. When we built the company, we built a blueprint to sell it. We didn't really publicly tell people that but the intentions was to build a great company, and one of the 8 exit companies we're targeting was Google. So to see the lifespan of that company come true was pretty exciting. And the product of RightsFlow today is the global technology behind Google, and it's doing hundreds of millions of dollars in business. So to see that business grow and develop from a little incubator in my apartment on the Upper East Side. Hopefully the next one I start will be here in the Bronx, but at that time that was the best facility and location to start in my apartment, and to see it now globally at Google is pretty exciting. And just to give you a little context, the business is predominantly focused on YouTube. It creates inventory for advertisers, and then we help with the monetization around that. And it's pretty exciting to see that, because we always said, we had RightsFlow, we said we're going to change the world in a way we are through YouTube, with the power of that technology and that platform. We're seeing over 1 billion people who access YouTube today, and our company is part of that growth. The interesting thing, as you learn, growing up in the Bronx, which for me, I learned a lot of the different things about discipline and quality and integrity, things that I feel that translate pretty successfully into small businesses and large businesses. And when I say growing up with your father making $22,000 a year, money was not accessible. Toys weren't easily accessible. We waited once a year at Christmas to get the toys, or your birthday, and you had to really innovate. And I was always trying to create ideas, and starting. When people talk about lemonade shops, I had 2 running it simultaneously. I was the guy making sure the money was coming in. I was making sure I got the products, the right lemonade, and I was really hustling. And whether it was football organization or in school, I did well. I was always trying to think of something, and being in that environment where you had nothing but your brain. And I always remember as a kid, I used to dream a lot, and like every little kid, but I used to dream and close my eyes, and I used to, when you close your eyes, sometimes after you see light, you see stars, and I used to say, I see the stars, and I used to make my plan of where I wanted to be. And I think as a business owner, you have to make that plan. You have to create vision around who you are, what you are, and why you're going to do it. And those are things that were very important, and learning from the Bronx streets in a way, how to negotiate and hustle, translates into the skill sets that you need to create a vision. And I was very fortunate that, as a business creator, business owner, I was able to translate a lot of that skill sets into the business and the leadership that we have in the team. But the one thing that when we started the business, I'd learned a lot in my previous experiences, and I worked in several startups as well. I worked for investment firms and investment companies who used to hire me and come in and say, build a business unit. I'd build business units on the ground in Russia, Brazil. I would travel and help set up these businesses. But the real key to everything we did was always centered around execution. And I believe execution starts from the minute you wake up, whether you're negotiating with your wife or going to get coffee. Little things in life are execution, and you have to understand the power of execution. But as a business, the one thing that I first did was to look at what does execution mean to me. And in order to execute this business, the full lifespan, the fundamentals of business, it starts with people. You need people. Without people, you don't have a business. You don't have a technology. You don't have no products. You don't have services. So the first thing I thought about was the people aspect. The second component was once you have the people, you can get the brain power around you to create a strategy. That strategy will help you with the vision, the ideas, and decide how you're going to progress with the people, the strategy. And then in order to realize a strategy, you need operations and functions behind your business, whether it's facilities, technology, servers, all those things that you need in order to execute. So I take the people plus the strategy and the operation, and those three components for me help me execute the business that we had and still have. And so let me take you through each one. I mean, feel free to stop me. But the idea, hopefully, some of this translates. I know I don't know how many people are entrepreneurs in the room. I believe we're all entrepreneurs, but hopefully this translates to you. Hopefully people who are working with entrepreneurs, people are funding, some of these ideas might translate to you. So hire smarter than you. That's the first thing I figured out right away in every team that I've worked with is hire people smarter than me. I like to think that whatever subject matter we're talking about, I want to be the least smartest guy in the room. Hopefully the person who's in front of me is very specific, will help me rise to them and help learn more. Hire employees for 4 years. These are things that were very important to me, that I wanted my people to stay. I didn't want to hire people on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis. I wanted to hire them that they'll be smart enough to be with me for 4 years. One thing that always helped when we started the company, we did a cash payment, which was salary and compensation around that. We also created an equity program for all employees. For some of the employees, the equity was, I've done this before, I'm not as interested in equity. The ones who exited, when we sold the company to Google, which we had a pretty high stay rate at our company, I think 97% of employees stayed, but a lot of people worked out very well for them. But the idea was, let's create a program and compensation around keeping them for 4 years. Another component I think about is placing people in the best suited positions. A lot of companies will allow people to continue in a position they're going to fail in, and it's your job as a leader and a manager is help put them in the right positions to succeed. And then we have a lot of stories. When we were a startup early on, you're doing everything. One person's doing marketing, finance, and legal. Another person's doing business development, running IT. But as you grow, make sure you have those people in the best suited position. I think it's very important and fundamental that you learn, you listen to your employees, and try to get them in. And a lot of times, and even at Google today, we work with people, and I say, what would you like to be doing? Now, obviously, we'd all like to be doing other things that we should be doing, but in the parameter of what would you like to be doing that will help you contribute, because you want to spark their interest, their innovations, and passion for what they do. And if you do that, I think if you work with employees, you'll see that they will rise to that and actually perform better than being in a position they're probably going to fail or not be passionate about. Another component that I had around people is we were colleagues. I always wanted to instill people that we have roles and functions. And I would always say, when people said the boss, which I would always say, there's only one boss with me, that's my wife at home, not me. And trying to create that barrier that allows people to realize that there's definitely roles and responsibilities that you have to undertake. And if you break that barrier where you feel that you're in this hierarchical, that this is the boss, this is me, and this little ecosystem, I don't think it works as well. So we try to always negate that, and every time we go to events or conferences around employees, I always say we are colleagues. Transparency with information. The one thing that we started from day one was sharing information. Working at a company like Google, they share quite a bit of information to the employees, and we started doing that. I feel like the reason transparency is so key, you can move agile when things are going wrong, when things are not going the way you want them on a real-time basis. By having employees informed, they can make the best decisions that will help the business get where you need to go. And transparency information is key. The one lesson we learned when we had Rice was don't tell everybody how much money you have in the bank, because that can really shock things. And we were a company that was very fortunate to run with very limited capital investment, and meaning that we ran a very lean business. My partner, Ben, who started with me, was a finance whiz, and we were able to really operate the business without a large capital infusion. And if you're a startup, think about the capital you take in cash, because it's important, especially when you exit, when you control 70% of the company and Google buys you. It's a nice payoff. So equity education, I'm a big believer in training. I think what's going on in these events in Fordham University, events whether in the Bronx or Manhattan, getting information, access to educating your employees. We started training our employees from the day we started the company. As we grew, we would spend that extra dollar. At the time, it was coming out of my pocket because I self-funded the business, but I recognized that in order us to grow as a business, we had to educate, and knowledge is power, and keeping your employees as highly educated as they can on the subject matter you're in is critical. And we would continuously do copyright classes. We were in the IP space, so we would do copyright training, management training, technology training, and we would encourage everyone to contribute and participate into these types of discussions. HR, employee guidance. I think, in the startup world, that's one of the areas I think is sometimes neglected, is understanding, what are the challenges that people have, and having some sort of guidance. We were fortunate to hire an HR consultant. Probably within the first year we started, we brought in someone that I'd worked with before. They would help be a sounding board to the employees, but also help us with the direction of creating the best 401k plan available for our little startup. Best insurance. Insurance was a big priority. We had people who had families that we had to have insurance. These types of things are so critical because you have to recognize that running a business, it's just not about generating revenue, developing businesses. It's what goes on in the office and outside the office. You should be considerate. We eventually used a company called Insperity. It's an outsourced HR company. At the time, they worked wonderfully well. I don't know how they're doing today, but at that time it was very helpful. And what was great about Insperity, or companies like Insperity, they brought leadership and management training and access to tools that were not stuff that we couldn't create or weren't available to us. And thinking about how people can access that information is so critical. And we found that for the employee morale, giving us that consideration to HR resources is such valuable. And I've been in startups where HR was the last concern. And a lot of times the executive management team were making decisions about employees that can not be a healthy experience, and having proper HR people or people that have knowledge of that was very critical. And one thing that we always would like to encourage the people was be humble, and we like to consider ourselves still humble today. We've had talks with our employees because we have people that came right out of college, did internships at our companies. Our company Wrightsville, and now they work at Google. Big salaries, big responsibilities, but still, which we believe we hire very humble people, and that still translates today. There's a lot more little points we can go into, but I thought these were some of the things that I found were very important to the people strategy that we had at Wrightsville. All right, so the strategy side, defining the vision, I think that's critical. It took us about, I think, a year and a half to really, define who we were as a business, and it's hard to get that 30-second or less, who you are, what you do, and why you do it, and, elevator pitch. And I think it's important that people start to understand, and more importantly, educate your employees to the vision of the business. And it also becomes a selling tool as well, because by them being able to explain who you are, maybe they're at a conference, maybe they're at some event, they are able to explain who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing in that 30 seconds or less, and having the whole company understand that is important and critical. Another lesson I learned was, as a business, are you a painkiller or a vitamin? I think it's very important. And a long time ago, I learned this lesson someone who was one of the original funders of FedEx, and he said, "Patrick, are you a painkiller or a vitamin?" I was like, "I'm a vitamin." It's not good to be a vitamin because you don't always have to take your vitamins. But I think today, fortunately, Google had the vision of Wrightsville. We became a painkiller for them and the business unit. But it's very important because I hear a lot of startups come along and say, here's my idea. I think every idea is good, but you ever realize, is it really going to solve a big problem, or is it a solution that's going to solve some sort of painkiller perspective. I think it's something that you should really take in consideration when you're thinking about your vision and where your business model will be. Identifying the problem, that's something of a challenge for some businesses. Don't try to identify too many problems. Create the product solution and economics, how you make the money. These are some critical components to the business. And still, to this day, when we were running RightsFlow, we always would challenge, how big is the problem we're solving, the solutions, and the economics, how you make money. Pricing, we had an enterprise business, so we worked with companies like Google, Clear Channel, and those are challenges because you're dealing with these big behemoths of companies, and your model and your economics around it had to make sense for you and for them. And obviously the addressable market, when you're starting a company, make sure there's enough of a market size. It was interesting, I was pitched to be a CEO of a company about a year ago, and this company had $20 million invested, and they were looking for a new CEO. And I sat in a room, I just, because I've had the training and generalist perspective on venture capital, and all the questions were asked of me about my addressable market, I realized this company had about 100 real client prospects, and it was like $1,000 a client. And I said, that's not a real viable business when you got $20 million investment. So I didn't really take the job, but it's things you have to think about as you're putting your business model, your assumptions model together. As a company, with your strategy, you have to have clear goals, objectives, and milestones. And the one thing that I learned good lessons on, I worked for a company at one time that just said, Patrick, this new division you created, we need $10 million next year. And I'm like, how? And the lesson there is, unless you can explain to me how I'm going to do that, why would I do that, and when will I do that? And so I think it's important as a CEO, as a leader, to sit down with your people and set the clear goals, objectives, and milestones. Work with them, roll up the sleeves. I think those things are sometimes neglected in businesses, and a lack of leadership can really hurt companies from not setting those clear goals. And it was very important. And to this day, I still like to sit down and walk through the strategy. Obviously, as you grow a business, there's people that take that leadership and responsibility on it, and you're no longer dependent on you being involved. But I think it's very important as a startup that you sit down and set those. And the how and when prioritization of business. And, I realized when I was starting, when we had RightsFlow running, there were times when I would send out emails, and we were, 10, 15 people, and I realized the prioritizations were readjusted based on what I would say, and it would be hurtful more than progressive towards the company. And so the thing that we tried to teach employees was the how and when rule around, I always say, building the new Brooklyn Bridge. And I believe you can do anything, and maybe not transport people telepathically or some like Star Trek being way, but the one thing that I recognize is the how and when on the Brooklyn Bridge. And I would say to them, can you build me the new Brooklyn Bridge? They would say no. They would say how. I'd say, well, I have $50 billion, and the average cost to build the Brooklyn Bridge is $38 billion. We leave a contingency of $12 billion. I say, okay, that's how we're going to do it. And then the when? Well, the average year is 3 years to do, and they would say, I can do that in 3 years. And the point of the exercise is they would come back to me with the question of how and when. And you as a CEO or a leader, you have to be able to responsibly educate them on or provide the answers as to why, how and when they'll do that. And I think that's a very important lesson, because a lot of misdirection happens in companies where they just go off without understanding how and when they're going to be able to do something, whether they're building a product or service, and know how to change and pivot. If you're going down a path of failure, you have to be prepared to pivot. And as a business, I think it's very important that you don't continue down a path. Obviously, with startups, you want to create some bets, you want to take some risk, and you want to continue down a path. But don't continue down a path if you don't see success. And the other one good lesson I learned is do one thing great. When we received our capital in 2009, we received $1.5 million in capital. Obviously at the time it looks like a lot of money, and so when you have a lot of money, you have to spend that money. And when you have to spend that money, you start to think about everything else that you should be doing great. And we realized we started to look to diversify in other areas of businesses, other verticals. But the one thing we learned was we did one thing great, which was licensing. And I think it's important that in order to build a great business, you have to do one thing great first. It doesn't mean necessarily you always have to be one vertical, one area, but I think it's important that you do one thing great and be successful at it. Again, you have to tie the other aspects to it. Is it a painkiller vision? Hopefully there's an economical and viable business model. to support that, but really looking at focusing on one thing I think is very important, and it was a lesson that we learned, and we cut out all the clutter and focused on one thing, and that was what was very strategic to the acquisition of Google of our company. So operations. Without operations, you don't have a business. You need all these things. Again, people, strategy, and operations. And when you're starting a company, it's typically three components. You have the commandos. Those are the people that are going in and making things happen. I'm saying it profounded here. Then you have the infantry people that come in and do the work, and they do the battling and make sure that the products that you've sold in the market, the commandos have sold, are supported. And then you have the policemen that actually govern all that and make sure the clients are actually getting what they need, that they're getting client services. And really, it's a key aspect of businesses. And when you're a startup, you're probably all three. You're trying to do the commandoing, you're traveling, you're trying to make things happen. You're doing the infantry, you're actually doing the work and delivering the services, and then you have to actually govern and police your clients. But as you grow your business, you want to separate those into three different areas. Innovate fast, fail faster. The one key that we really encourage is people to innovate, come up with great ideas, really pursue a lot of different approaches to the products and the business we're doing. But fail. Fail fast. Don't continue down that path, because you can really hurt a startup if you go down a path. And there's a lot of businesses will continue and not pivot or make that decision to fail. Decision making. If you need to empower your people to make decisions, again through education and knowledge, allow them to make decisions. That's the one thing that I was always encouraging, is collaboratively, but individually you can make decisions, and we'll go by those decisions. We'll test them. Again, when you have people smarter than you and around each other, they'll help you with those decisions. Problem solve. The one thing when we had our weekly management meetings, the first thing we attacked in discussions was what are the problems in each one of the departments that we're working on. I've been around a lot of cultures where all we do is cheerlead, and what happens is there usually is one dominant area or department that's going to kind of rise above the rest, and they become the pinnacle of success, and everyone else is not relevant. We reversed it. We took the technology from the bottom, because we were a technology company, but we weren't. The money and the majority was coming from the business development. The technology was the least resource, because we had the least amount of money to resource the technology at the time. But we took the technology and put that to the forefront. And I think that was very key to our decisions. Obviously, we would recognize when things were great, but we were not about, hey, this is so great. Because everyone knows in a company usually the success, because there's a buzz, there's a deal close, it's press release, it's announced. And turning the problems and solutions around that was very critical. And I don't believe cheerleading is also great culture, because again, it segments a certain class, and it puts barriers in between the other departments of people. I have another word for mess up, but I call it the okay to mess up rule. And I thought this was also very critical to our business success, where people were okay messing up. You weren't judged on your last success and your last failure. We would have people who would just walk in and say, I made a $50,000 mistake. We pat them on the back and say, all right, let's make sure we don't do it the next time, and let's go forward. Well, obviously, if they keep doing that, then they're probably not in the right position, and we have to figure out a better position. But I thought that culture is very important to us and to our company, to allow people to fail and acknowledge it, because if you don't allow them, they won't innovate. They won't think outside of the box, if you want to use that word, but I really think it's very important to allow that. And it did have this fear factor that if you failed, something was going to happen, you're going to get fired, and you allow people to feel good. And at the end of the day, if you hired right and smart from the day one and thinking they'll be there for 4 years, they're going to mess up, and you know what? For 4 years, they got a good shot at doing better, succeeding than failure. Don't micromanage, very important. I think I just encourage that. Team motivation, there's a lot of culture in New York City, a lot of culture in the Bronx. I think if you're starting a business in the Bronx, don't always think office. We had a rule that you don't ever have to come to work. That was one of the rules we had. But we don't care. But if we set clear goals, objectives, and milestones, and you're hitting them and exceeding them per the plan, I don't care where you are. I hope you're on vacation. My general counsel, who's a big Google executive today, I didn't know where he was. He was a musician too, and he'd be touring the world. I'm like, hey, Scott, where are you? He's like, I'm playing in Brazil. I'm in the mountains of Brazil. I was like, great, man, how's it going? that was so encouraging to people to know that they didn't have, you know, a family event on Friday or sick that they had to feel this guilt you had to go to work. And I mean, within reason, you have to manage it because there are probably people that will take advantage of it. But I felt that was a key motivation factor for people, especially people with families and kids. You know, allow them to, you know, work around the environment. Again, clear goals, objectives, and milestones. We did off-sites, you know, we took the people away, and we didn't turn it into, this is how great we are. This is like,